We just learned a lot about broader approaches to government regulation globally. Now we'll turn to the examination of a specific category of harm as an entry point to a wider conversation on what it means to extend universal rights online. With a lightning talk on the major report that UNICEF just released on child protection and digital rights, here are Emma Day and Linda Raftree.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma Day. I'm a human rights lawyer and I've been working for UNICEF as a consultant together with Linda Raftree, who's also speaking today, and Yasmina Byrne, UNICEF's Chief of Global Policy, to write a manifesto on good data governance for children. Over to you, Linda, to introduce yourself, and then if you could explain why we thought it was important to have a data governance manifesto specifically for children.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everybody, and thanks for having us today. A little about me, my background is in child protection and child participation. And as the world has become more digitized over the past decade, I've really kind of moved into this sweet spot of technology and digital rights, including digital safeguarding, data privacy, data governance, with a focus on children and other groups who face greater risk of harm in the digital environment or with regard to their data. There really hasn't been a document like the manifesto before. What we wanted to do is flesh out the rights and special needs and protections that children are entitled to according to the Convention on the Rights of the Child and how they relate to data. Then we wanted to identify key challenges with how governments, corporations, and social welfare bodies, in other words, humanitarian, development, nonprofit organizations, are governing data. Thirdly, we are wanting to explore how current data government regimes are addressing children's rights and make some key recommendations that could be taken on board as new data regulations, policies, and guidance are being developed. Lastly, we wanted to do this in a way that was digestible for people who are not lawyers. So there are some specific reasons that we wanted to look more closely at children's data. Data on individuals tend to be treated the same way regardless of who the individual is, but children are more vulnerable than adults and less able to understand the long-term implications of consenting to their data being collected. So their data needs to be treated differently and they need greater protection. You've probably been hearing a lot more recently about privacy, fairness, justice concerns related to the collection of adult data. All of these issues are magnified when it comes to the collection of data from children because they have greater cognitive, emotional, and physical vulnerabilities. Since standard approaches to data governance, the burden is placed on the individual to advance and advocate on behalf of their own interests. This doesn't work for children because of their age and their evolving capacities. So we need a different approach. And in the manifesto, we try to lay out what that approach might be. Emma is going to talk about some of the reasons that we wanted to address children's data in governance and think about how the findings can be translated in general. So over to you, Emma.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. So I think how children's data relates to data governance in general is a really important question, and it's something that you and I have discussed, Linda, a lot throughout the development of this manifesto. We definitely found there was a big gap in the humanitarian and development sectors in relation to expertise in data governance in general, even though data-driven innovation products for both children and adults are such a trend right now. There are big gaps at the level of government in many cases too. We're seeing some governments really struggle with how to collect and use data in ways that contribute to better development and well-being, while at the same time ensuring they're not exposing their citizens to risks from data capture, for example, by the private sector. We also found there's a lack of expertise in the data governance sector on child rights, and children are often seen as a side issue, whereas in reality, children make up around 1/3 of internet users, and their rights need to be integrated into all data governance initiatives. This can also be seen as an opportunity for thinking about how to address the needs and rights of other vulnerable groups in relation to data governance and not just children. Linda, I know you spent a lot of time analysing the risks in relation to data. What were some of the things that stood out to you in relation to risks?
Yeah, we got a lot of really thoughtful and eye-opening inputs from our desk research. We worked with 17 global experts as well in data privacy and child rights. Some of them authored some pretty exciting papers around the risks that are involved, and then we drew from those papers for the manifesto. I think one of the really big concerns that are highlighted throughout the desk research, the papers, is this issue of surveillance at different levels that's enabled by new technologies and data. And this is surveillance about children and of children and their activities. So we looked at government surveillance and how it can have a chilling effect on children and youth activists and their freedom of speech and expression. This is happening both in democracies and in authoritarian settings. Governments have access to all kinds of new tools to track what young people are doing online, on their devices, and currently children are being swept up in this type of surveillance. We also looked at corporate surveillance, specifically with regard to advertising and marketing, and looking at how children's data is mined and then used to manipulate them, both to purchase things or to manipulate their behavior and their attitude towards certain topics and themes. And a third area that I'll mention is really how even socially minded programs, as I mentioned, humanitarian development organizations, education, healthcare, are over collecting data, and this contributes to this issue of surveillance as well. We didn't only look at risks, though. We looked at what we could do about it. What are some of the solutions? And so I'm going to hand over to Emma to tell you about some of those solutions. And just wanted to note that we had lots of regional consultations in Europe, in North America, Latin America, and Africa to try to gain a global perspective on these issues. So back over to you, Emma.
Thanks. Yeah, so we wanted to make sure the manifesto reflects global concerns around children's data governance, and not just those of the US, Europe, and China, which are the countries with the most power currently in the data governance space. So you can see on this slide the action points we came up with in consultation with lots of diverse experts from different regions. I could talk about this for hours, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to pick out 4 of these to explain a little bit more. So action point 2 talks about prioritizing children's best interests in all decisions about their data. And this applies across all sectors and starts with the need for a child rights impact assessment, which should encompass the technology's impact across all areas of children's rights, and specifically to address data protection concerns. Action point 4, so key to a truly rights-based approach to accountability would be a reversal of the current burden on children and their advocates to bring challenges against companies, organizations, and governments for breaches of children's data rights. Currently, the onus is on children to prove rights violations, but instead, we need governments to mandate companies to increase their reporting and transparency to reverse that burden back onto the companies. Action point 8. There's a need for governments to innovate, and this is becoming a central tenet of public policy making, including in policies related to data. This can include things like regulatory sandboxes, data trusts, data intermediaries, and these sources of innovation can come from diverse contexts. Action point 10. This manifesto calls for increased collaboration between data governance actors internationally. So it's crucial that this knowledge transfer is not just from the global north to the global south. We need emerging data governance regimes from all parts of the world that can be usefully applied to children to be considered in global governance regimes. So I'm going to stop there, but we hope you'll read more about these action points and about the whole manifesto on the UNICEF website. You can see the link here. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.